Chapter 10. Almost overnight, the Galactic Republic acquired a massive military force that included interstellar battleships, weapon-laden starfighters, and enormous ground vehicles. While senators argued whether Supreme Chancellor Palpatine had been wrong to conscript and deploy the hastily raised Grand Army of the Republic, more worlds were quick to join Count Dooku's separatist movement, which had officially named itself the Confederacy of Independent Systems. As Master Yoda had foreseen, the Clone Wars spread like an explosive virus throughout the galaxy. Although Palpatine had always presented himself as a cautious, unassuming politician, he made it known to all that he would do whatever was necessary to preserve the Republic. Despite his modest protests, the Senate demanded that he stay in office long after his term had expired. But as the Clone Wars escalated, even his most trusted advisors were surprised by his many amendments to the Republic Constitution, which extended his own political powers while limiting the freedom of others. The Jedi Council reluctantly agreed to allow Jedi to serve as generals to the Grand Army's clone troops. However, not every Jedi was willing to engage in warfare. Some chose to serve as healers, and others abandoned the Jedi Order entirely. Compelled to fight on behalf of the Republic, Obi-Wan Kenobi became a general, and Anakin, like many other Padawans, was promoted to knighthood sooner than expected to accommodate the Grand Army's needs. Although members of the Jedi Council observed that Anakin was still prone to arrogance and impatience, no one disputed the fact that he continued to grow even stronger with the power of the Force. Lethal droids were not the only adversaries to the Jedi, as Count Dooku had recruited such deadly beings as the Sith aspirant Asajj Ventress and the nearly indestructible Jedi bounty hunter Dirge to fight on his behalf. Dooku himself had trained Ventress in the art of lightsaber combat, but often ridiculed her preference to wield two lightsabers at the same time. Anakin nearly defeated Ventress on the fourth moon of the gas giant Yavin. One of their duels in the industrial sector of Coruscant left him with a deep scar on the right side of his face. 3 years after the Battle of Geonosis, Ventress and Dirge no longer posed a threat. But Count Dooku led the Confederacy, and the Jedi were no closer to finding the mysterious Darth Sidious. The Clone Wars raged on. After destroying a secret Confederacy laboratory on the planet Nelvon in the Outer Rim, Anakin and Obi-Wan were leaving with R2-D2 in a Republic Star Destroyer when they received an urgent message. R2-D2 plugged into a communications console and projected a hologram of Mace Windu, who said, "Kenobi, Skywalker, Coruscant is under siege, and General Grievous has abducted the Supreme Chancellor. You must return immediately. You must rescue Palpatine." "Grievous," Anakin snarled as the holographic message ended. Count Dooku's most notorious lieutenant, the cyborg General Grievous, commanded the Confederacy's droid armies. Grievous had been trained in lightsaber combat by Dooku himself and had a penchant for killing Jedi and collecting their lightsabers. Although some Jedi wondered just how much Palpatine was trying to end the war, Anakin had come to consider the Republic's leader among his most trusted friends. "I won't let the Chancellor die," Anakin vowed to himself. Stepping away from R2-D2 and Obi-Wan, Anakin addressed the armored clone troops in the Star Destroyer's hangar. "Battle stations, all crews to their fighters. Prepare to jump into hyperspace. Move!" Republic Star Destroyers and Confederacy gunships were fully engaged in an explosive battle over the skies of Coruscant when Anakin and Obi-Wan returned from the Outer Rim. Anti-fighter flak flashed in bright bursts near every ship, and decimated vessels tumbled from orbit and smashed into the spires of the city-covered world below. Flanked by a squadron of veteran clone aviators and with R2-D2 acting as Anakin's co-pilot, the two Jedi left their own Star Destroyer and a pair of starfighters and raced into the melee. Blasting droid ships while evading missiles, Anakin and Obi-Wan courageously made their way through the deadly flow of enemy vessels until they infiltrated the Confederate flagship, Invisible Hand, on which Supreme Chancellor Palpatine was held hostage by General Grievous. To increase speed and maneuverability, Jedi starfighters were engineered without shield generators. Although this led some opponents to believe that such starfighters were more vulnerable to attack, most Jedi pilots were adept at using the Force to anticipate, evade, and attack their enemies. Anakin was considered among the top pilots in the Jedi Order, but unlike other Jedi, he did not hesitate to rely upon technology to help achieve his goals. The way Anakin saw things, the Force had not been enough to save his own right arm or stop Dooku on Geonosis, and he doubted the war would be won by the Force alone either. The Jedi moved stealthily through the ship until they reached the Invisible Hand's main communications and sensor pod, a lofty chamber with expansive windows that provided a 180-degree view of the surrounding space battle. It was in this chamber that they found Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, who sat in a tall chair, his wrist pinned by energy binder to the chair's arms. Palpatine's face was pale, and he did not look relieved to see the Jedi. "Are you all right?" Anakin asked as he and Obi-Wan approached the Chancellor's seated form. Palpatine nervously looked past the two Jedi and said, "Count Dooku." Anakin and Obi-Wan turned and looked up to see the impeccably attired Dooku and two super battle droids step onto an elevated balcony that hugged the aft wall of the chamber. Although Dooku was in his 9th decade, he moved with the grace of a jungle predator. Anakin's mind flashed back to his confrontation with Dooku on Geonosis, when he made the mistake of charging Dooku without Obi-Wan right at his side. Keeping his eyes on Dooku as he addressed Anakin, Obi-Wan said, "This time we will do it together." "I was about to say that," Anakin said. Dooku stepped away from his droids, leapt over the balcony's railing, and executed a neat flip before landing a short distance from the Jedi. He reached to his side and drew his lightsaber. "Get help," Palpatine said urgently from his seat. "You're no match for him. He's a Sith Lord." Obi-Wan offered an assuring smile. "Chancellor Palpatine, Sith Lords are our specialty." Obi-Wan and Anakin shed their Jedi robes, letting them fall to the floor, and they drew their own lightsabers. "Your swords, please," Dooku urged as he walked toward the Jedi. "We don't want to make a mess of things in front of the Chancellor." "You won't get away this time, Dooku," Obi-Wan said. He and Obi-Wan ignited their blue-bladed lightsabers and advanced on Dooku, who ignited his own red-bladed weapon. The beams of their lightsabers hummed and clashed, and they moved across the chamber. Dooku defended himself effortlessly. On the level above, the two droids didn't budge, but watched silently as the figures came to a momentary standstill. While the three lightsabers continued to blaze, Dooku grinned at his opponents and said, "I've been looking forward to this." Not intimidated by the elder swordsman, Anakin said, "My powers have doubted since the last time we met, Count." "Good," Dooku said. "Twice the pride, double the fall." The Jedi charged once again. Dooku backed up as he parried their blows, then used the Force to throw Obi-Wan to the floor. As Anakin continued his assault on Dooku, forcing him back up the steps to the upper level, Obi-Wan recovered himself and leapt up to rejoin the fight. The two droids fired at Obi-Wan, but he batted their fired energy bolts back at them and cut them down as he moved fast for Dooku. Unfortunately, Dooku moved faster, extending his left hand toward Obi-Wan as he used the Force to lift the Jedi off his feet, while at the same time constricting his throat. As Obi-Wan gasped, Anakin swung at Dooku from behind, but Dooku kicked Anakin's stomach with his left foot, smashing the young Jedi against a nearby wall. Obi-Wan was still suspended in the air when Dooku gestured again with his hand to send his choking victim sailing across the chamber. Obi-Wan crashed against the railing of an extended balcony, then collapsed like a broken doll to the floor. With another gesture, Dooku used the Force to tear a section of the balcony away from its braces and pin Obi-Wan's unconscious form to the floor. "Master!" Anakin threw himself at Dooku, knocking him from the balcony to the floor below. Leaping down after his quarry, Anakin struck again and again at Dooku until both of their blades were practically locked onto each other. "I sense great fear in you, Skywalker," Dooku said. "You have hate, you have anger, but you don't use them." Anakin grimaced, angrier than before. The blades unlocked, and the duel resumed. Trading blows across the chamber, they came to a stop near the hostage Palpatine. Dooku was using both hands to grip his lightsaber, putting more of his strength into each deadly swing when Anakin reached out fast with his left hand to catch Dooku's wrists. In the moment that Dooku was temporarily pinned, Anakin's right hand twisted sharply to swing his lightsaber between him and the startled Dooku. Dooku's lightsaber automatically deactivated as it flew out of his severed hands, which fell to the floor with an ugly flopping sound. His knees buckled, and he dropped to kneel beside his hands. Anakin snatched Dooku's lightsaber from the air, then activated the red blade and crossed it with the blade of his own weapon, angling the blades to either side of his opponent's head. Dooku's eyes were wide and his mouth agape as he stared at the maimed ends of his arms. Because lightsabers cauterized as fast as they cleaved through flesh, there was surprisingly little blood. I got you, Anakin thought, keeping the lightsaber's blades close to Dooku's neck. Good, Anakin, Palpatine said from his seat. Good. Unexpectedly, he chuckled. He almost sounds cheerful. He must be in shock. Then Palpatine said, Kill him. What? Anakin kept his eyes on Dooku, who shifted his trembling gaze to Palpatine. Kill him now, Palpatine said. Dooku looked up at Anakin, who now saw genuine fear in the old maimed man's eyes. Anakin said, I shouldn't. His words seemed to give some relief to Dooku, whose panicked expression relaxed slightly as he continued to tremble. I can be merciful, Anakin thought as he held Dooku's gaze. I'm a better Jedi than you ever were. Do it, Palpatine said, practically spitting the words out. Fear flickered again in Dooku's eyes as he suddenly sensed what was coming. Anakin rapidly uncrossed the blades, cleaving through Dooku's neck. Dooku's body collapsed alongside his hands, while his head rolled and thudded across the floor like an ill-shaped ball. Anakin felt his own heart pounding in his chest as he deactivated the lightsabers and almost immediately thought, What have I done? You did well, Anakin, Palpatine said calmly. He was too dangerous to be kept alive. Yes, but he was an unarmed prisoner, Anakin said as he released Palpatine's energy binders. I shouldn't have done that. It's not the Jedi way. Rising from the tall seat, Palpatine said, It is only natural. He cut off your arm and you wanted revenge. It wasn't the first time, Anakin. Remember what you told me about your mother and the Sand People? In the 3 years since his mother's death, Anakin had convinced himself that he had temporarily lost his mind that night at the Tusken camp. It remained his darkest secret, something he never even told Obi-Wan because he knew he would be banished from the Jedi Order, and yet he felt compelled to take Palpatine into his confidence. Anakin grimaced at the memory of the slaughtered Tuskens. The desire to kill them had been beyond his control. Killing Dooku wasn't the same. I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway, Palpatine said. Now we must leave before more security droids arrive. Anakin ran to Obi-Wan, who remained pinned under the broken section of the balcony. Outside the chamber's large windows, a ripple of fiery bursts indicated the space battle had intensified. Anakin, there's no time, Palpatine said as Anakin pulled his master free from the wreckage. We must get off the ship before it's too late. The invisible hand shuddered violently as it was wrecked by a series of explosions. Checking Obi-Wan's vital signs, Anakin said, He seems to be all right. Leave him, Palpatine commanded, or we'll never make it. His fate will be the same as ours, Anakin said, for once refusing to obey the Chancellor. He lifted and slung Obi-Wan's body over his shoulders and ran with Palpatine to the lift tube. Anakin and Palpatine were still aboard the Invisible Hand when Obi-Wan recovered. Along with R2-D2, they were briefly apprehended by General Grievous, who had managed to evade his metallic clutches. Unfortunately, Grievous launched all the escape pods and fled into space as the battle-damaged Invisible Hand began to tumble through Coruscant's upper atmosphere. Although the crash landing was bone-jarring for Palpatine and the Jedi, Anakin's incredible piloting skills delivered them, and what little remained of the Confederate flagship, to a landing strip. Mace Windu, Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan, and C-3PO were among the dignitaries who greeted Palpatine and Anakin at the Chancellor's private landing platform at the Senate offices while Obi-Wan returns to the Jedi Temple. After speaking briefly with Bail Organa as they entered the office building, Anakin found Padme discreetly waiting for him in the shadows of a tall column. He hadn't seen her in months. Although Anakin was concerned that General Grievous was still at large and had assumed leadership of the Confederacy, he forgot his troubles as he embraced Padme. But she seemed different. She had something very important to tell him.